Attention everybody, the views and opinions expressed on the show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate and subordinate ministries and or nonprofits. Oh, somebody's playing. Hey!
That would be me. Sorry.
All right, so I thought our stuff was up and running here, but it's not. Here we go.
Yeah, we are live because I'm on it already.
Oh, yeah, we're live. Not hearing any of my music, but I think that's because number 6 is muted.
Oh, you got it.
Jeff's got it. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Morning Drive with Matt and Jay. My name is Matt.
My name is Jay.
My name is Steve.
Oh,
My name is Jeff with a G.
And Jeff with a G.
here we go. Let's try it again. Good morning. Coming to you live from Acts Media Group headquarters here in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. It's the Morning Drive with Matt and Jay with your hosts, Matt and Jay and Steve.
Jeff
with a G. We've got to have everybody with us today. Today's title, We Should Always Remember. It is 9/11.
Yes. We were just talking about that, Rachel and I think we should do like a moment of silence or however you want to do it.
Yeah, we need a moment of silence for those lives that were lost in that tragedy known as 9/11, the Twin Towers, whenever they were struck with airplanes and fell. Now, the one thing that kind of disturbed me the other day is somebody posted a picture of it, but Facebook blocked it and said this may contain offensive images.
Right.
That bothers me.
Yep.
Who is it offending?
It shouldn't offend anybody.
It shouldn't. But because, I mean, we need to always remember, I get it. It is surreal. Like, even whenever you watch movies and stuff and you see the Twin Towers in the background, I know. It's surreal. And, we remember that. I mean, that was a terrible, terrible, terrible tragedy. Do you remember where you were whenever it happened?
I was in the emergency room for Rachel. I had to take her to the emergency room, and it was so chaotic. Even when they just announced that the hospitals needed to go into emergency mode or something like that, and we were just there when it just happened, and it was so chaotic in the emergency room.
Yeah.
And doctors were in their yellow or orange. Well, it was vests and things. It was just, that's all I could say is chaotic. But I was just going to say, a friend of mine, he was in the Navy with me. He worked on the 84th floor of the South Tower. And man, Stephanie had a cousin. Uh-huh. She had a friend that worked up on what floor was it?
No, he was on one of the planes.
Or he was on one of the planes.
Oh, my goodness. I know I worked for a military-based bank, and one of the things that
So, Steve, both of those people died, you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Well, he was in the South Tower on the 84th floor, and he was working for the Navy, and he never, obviously, he never made it out. They were on their way to rescue those guys on the 84th floor, but
yeah, that's our. Is it something like everyone from the 78th floor up died? The second tower, the second one hit.
Yep.
The first to go down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it was.
Morning, Audrey Snyder.
I've got James Allison.
Steve Bruno, Larry Milton. I guess I should have changed the title to 9/11 Memorial. There is a lot of memorial services going on now.
College of the Ozarks is putting one on this morning.
No, but it's like the Holocaust. Never forget. They just when they say never forget, it means the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And we should always remember is definitely appropriate.
Yep,
Yeah.
both
Absolutely.
of those are very important to remember.
Yeah.
We went to the Holocaust Museum up in Michigan in Bloomfield. I think it's the only Holocaust museum.
In the States.
Oh, the second one? Huh?
Other than the national one.
Oh, other than the national one.
Yeah, in D.C.
Right.
I was there. That was an amazing.
So that one, and then the one in West Bloomfield, Michigan. That was intense. I mean,
It's insane.
I mean,
Now they have a 9/11 museum.
right.
that has like artifacts from from the buildings, people's personal items and clothing and stuff. I've never been there.
You're talking about the one at Ground Zero, right?
I'm assuming.
Yeah,
that's
because
where
they
it's
took
at.
everything that was on the outside, that they pulled everything from the outside and placed it in glass containers or behind glass in a memorial type museum.
Now, like, not a lot of people know about Steve Buscemi. You know who he is. He's an actor. Before he was an actor, he was a professional firefighter in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
And he
those-
volunteered for like 2 or 4 weeks, working full shifts as a firefighter, helping with the search and rescue and stuff like that. I just think stuff like that's really cool. These actors and stuff, giving their time. I guess that always just
Or
it's
just
cool.
coming out of the woodwork and just going over there and helping find people or clean up or whatever.
It was. I mean,
Search and
I
rescue.
still remember it like it was yesterday. I was napping on the couch at my sister's house. I just got back from Florida about a month prior, and maybe a couple months prior. So I'm laying there on a couch, and I wake up, and everybody, and they're from the Northeast. So my sister's on the phone. One of the Twin Towers just got hit by a plane, and then proceeded to watch it. And that pretty much all the news was running was that for weeks and
Live.
weeks and weeks.
Well, they
that day
canceled all
it was
programs.
live.
That day it was live.
I saw live the second plane hit.
Yeah,
I did
everybody
too.
did. They weren't expecting it, and all of a sudden, boom,
And
here it goes.
immediately things changed. People realized this is not an accident.
No.
Because up until the second plane hit the second tower, most of it was rumor. They weren't sure. I mean, I imagine the government was sure. But the news media was like, what's happening? When the second plane hit the second tower, immediately everybody knew that this
Yeah.
was not an accident and
Yeah.
these were not rumors.
Yeah,
And then everything else was taken a whole lot more seriously. All the planes in the air, then they started to ground everything, make sure. And if you didn't head back to a certain airport, they were sending military
Fighter jets.
aircraft out.
Yeah.
they said that they were grounding all the planes. Now, I don't know if you've seen on YouTube, they actually have, and they play every now and then, the actual voices from phones from loved ones calling. And then I guess the dispatcher, the air controller, was talking to one of the waitresses about in one of the planes. And Betty, are you there? And it went dead after talking to him. And that was actually actual footage. It wasn't just,
Are those part of the museum too, the recordings?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
I'm
Yeah.
sure they would be. Just like Oklahoma City, they've got recordings that were on the radio about, oh no, we just heard the Federal Bureau building got hit. And that's when the radio went dead because they were in the building when that happened.
So
Yeah.
When they say never forget, what do you suppose it is that we're supposed to remember about it? Because I remember the visions. I remember this. I remember what I saw. But there's so much more there, and
Yeah.
it started way before that day and those events.
Yeah. Because
yeah.
not all the people that died were actually in the building when it got hit.
Well, I
Right.
think the same thing with
Firefighters,
the
police.
Holocaust.
Yeah.
What is it we're not supposed to forget? And I think that we are right now at those things are at risk.
Don't
we
forget-
are.
Yeah, don't forget what led up to it.
Right, and it wasn't like World War I and World War II where they say there was a shot fired or something like that started it. But that's not really what started it. It was an ideal, but even that, those ideals that brought it, they started before that even.
Oh, they were being planned for at least a year or two.
Right, so like with Nazi Germany, there were a lot of forces at play there. So they were in poverty. You know what I mean? And there was a lot going on in Nazi Germany, and I don't really even understand it all. And it depends on who's giving you the information, whether or not you're getting accurate information. But from what I understood, there was some were doing very well in Germany, and some were not. And they were paying for the guilt of their nation by being impoverished. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
they felt like they were being impoverished because of the guilt from World War One. So there was a whole bunch
Right.
of weird things going on that opened people's minds to such a deep hatred and vengeance.
Right. Well, you mean like the Versailles Treaty from World War One, where unlike end of World War II, where we helped build them up, they punished Germany. And
Yes.
they demanded payment for what they had done to injure other nations.
Europe.
Yeah. And
Which,
they couldn't do it.
They just recently paid off the debt from it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Since it was like 2012, I think, that they paid off the debt
From World War One?
from World War One.
Wow.
Wow.
I didn't know they held on to it that long.
Me either.
They had to, yeah. They had to pay it. It was a debt. And it was
That's-
owed to the banks. You know what I mean? It was equity that they had to pay back, that the equity of everything lost.
Yeah.
Big
Well,
restitution.
The parallel now is reparations for slavery, which is 40 acres and a mule promised to all freed slaves, former slaves, post-Civil War that they never got. And that's what you hear, individuals on the TV, they interview them, including politicians. They say, well, they're going in and they're going into stores and taking things for reparations. What's otherwise called looting is also called reparations.
I think that's a lack of depth of thought, and it's a selfish perspective because we've all lost something. I mean, I can talk about when I lost my father and how property tax and the way the insurance companies do business with the politicians so that the insurance company can get out of keeping up their end of the bargain for a lifetime of insurance payments, premiums, and hand it off to the state, and then the state demands the property to pay for the care. And even if you care for your loved one at home, they jack it up so that, and they balance the book too. They find out what the property's worth, what equity's in it, and that's what they charge. You know what I mean? So it's taken away inheritance. You know what I mean? So I can talk about reparations too. Things that are lost, that are unfair, that just aren't right. And we can go back through the ages, and the fact of life is that it's full of tragedy. Everyone is born and everyone dies, and throughout life there's tragedy. But the problem is you can't just look at the tragedy, because in between there's a lot worth living for, or else we wouldn't be fighting to live. And it's not reparations, 40 acres and a mule. It's your mother and your father. I see people who I know suffered through racist times that lived a lifetime as adults just scratching out a living for their family, loving their country, working hard, and suffered at the hands of racism, but came through it with dignity and grace and are still working hard, don't have resentment, treat people with respect and love and kindness. And what did they get out of that? What did they get out of coming through that with such grace and dignity and forgiveness and mercy and love
Peace
and
of
friendship
mind.
and kindness? Well, they also have a family, right? They got what they were working for. They love their family, and their family loves them. And that's not everybody. See, you can't generalize and apply something to everybody. So I think it's letting go of the resentments, but understanding where they came from. How do you do that? How do you manage that? I don't know. Because there's more to it. I'm saying there's more to it, and we 9/11 is over, and it's 19 years later. Well, is what was under the surface that brought it to that head? Because we weren't ready for it. We weren't aware of its plan. We weren't aware of its being planned. I mean, that was a date they picked before 9/11.
Yep.
So it was basically going to happen before we knew it. Well, what was it that brought it to that? You know, and have we really gained an understanding of that? An understanding of what was it and how can we see it and pick it out and be aware of what's happening, what's boiling under the surface?
Well, the reason why I mentioned about it yesterday, anticipating today, and I literally at 8:15 in the morning, as my wife and I were pulling into our parking garage in Newark to go into the state building and to get her fingerprints done for anticipation of adopting her daughter in Nepal a few months later, and we had to get all these, cleared for whatever criminals, blah blah blah, all the stuff you have to do for prospective adoptions, and literally saw the twin towers in that beautiful morning sun, literally glistening. And I said so to my wife as we're looking at them, so majestic, yet so vulnerable. And the reason I said that was because of radical Islam and the suicide bombings that were going on.
Because they'd already tried to do it with a U-Haul. I think
they'd already done it in 1993.
I was just going to say there was another bombing, but it was.
And I had
what
friends
they did
who
was
were there.
learn what it would take. You know?
I had friends that were there both times, and the one, he survived from the first building from about the 78th floor, and half of his company died, and he was senior vice president. He was the rank, but when they were told to get out, then it turned around and they said, the building said, "No, you don't have to leave." And he said, "Well, I'm leaving."
Yeah.
And he tried to get other people to go with him, and some people went, and some people took. He got down the elevator before the elevator shut down, but the guy who led the group down the stairs, they died. They didn't make it, or he didn't make it. And another friend who was on the 50th floor, and he made it out. So I'm glad that Mike and Paul are still alive today, and I'm sure they're sharing their testimonies today, because they have a beautiful. Their families did not know that they were alive for hours, and so it's very visceral. And I knew someone else who died, from Staten Island, a friend of my wife's. She grew up in Staten Island. Her cousin, one cousin, was a lieutenant in the fire department. And he tried to get across the bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, in his pickup truck after they'd been hit. And following his fire truck from his department in Staten Island, they let the fire truck through, but they would not let him cross the bridge. So he ran across, just hopped out of his pickup truck, ran across the bridge, and got there just in time to see them fall, the first one go down. And then he subsequently was carrying out the bodies of his fellow firefighters from his firehouse to the barge that took away the corpses across the river. And it really, really adversely affected him for years, post-traumatic stress. And I don't want to say bounced back. He came back because it was not fast. The other one is the husband of Peggy's first cousin. Great guy. Ultimately became an inspector, which is like number 2 in Staten Island. He had been at East New York, which is literally arguably the worst neighborhood in New York City, in Brooklyn, Body Bag Central. And these guys, he handled it better, but he also was not impacted so directly with literally the bodies of his fellow firefighters. So we saw it coming. I mean, in a sense, the possibility. It was so ironic, and that I literally said that to my wife that very morning. So it was very intense for us, and we spent the day with our family and just watched what was going on in New Jersey. And the next day we went into the city with clothes to offer to the people in need, and we got close to the but they wouldn't let us go south of 14th Street. It was all cut up, closed off. But the question is, how do we prevent it from happening again?
I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I think it's gone too far. I think that if it's going to happen again, it's going to happen again, and we just don't know when. There's been several things several reports since then. Well, America, you're going to have another attack. America, you're going to have another attack. We just didn't know. We were on high alert there for a while, I guess. In certain areas like California, there were certain buildings that they were eyeing, and they had actual people that were for these people that were, I don't know if it was Islam or whatever, had people actually how do you say, it's not sightings, but they were there looking for places. Spotting.
Now, right. I will say also, we remember the Twin Towers. We also need to remember the plane that
the Pentagon.
The Pentagon, and then the one that went down in the field, because the people may put the plane down. Instead of it headed towards whatever its target was.
Which was the Capitol or the White House?
Yes.
From what I understand, there was a husband on the plane of a wife who was dictating to him what was happening in the news. And he learned through his wife on the phone that they were flying the planes into targets.
Yes.
And then he rallied some of the other people on the plane to storm the cockpit.
Yeah, his last line was "Let's roll."
Roll. Yep. Everybody used that "Let's roll" for the longest time, and for 2-3 weeks they had news reports of people coming on as people that were working in planes and stuff, and said, "Well, this happened and that happened." It was just 2 weeks of just nothing but news and information.
So, yeah. So we can't forget them. They sacrificed themselves to save others.
I think we are forgetting, though, because it's not really just forgetting them, but it's forgetting what led to it. Just like in Nazi Germany, it's not just forgetting those that were lost. It's saying, look, this is something that rose up that we have to not allow to rise up again.
Right.
Never forget. I mean, if it happens again, have we forgotten? Or what's the, I don't know. I know there's the point to remembering because of so much loss and the people who, were innocent people who were lost, and then the brave heroes who went in and sacrificed themselves and their time to clean it up. But never forget just implies to me that there's something missing to the story that we don't have a clear picture of because it was so evil and deceitful and hidden, and it appeared in such a dramatic and deadly way, and I think that if we're not thinking about what it was that caused it, so what happened wasn't just that planes flew into buildings and people died. What happened was there were people who hated so much that they just wanted to kill, and it didn't matter who.
Wanted to destroy our entire way of life.
Yep, and that's what I was going to say, is that it was pre-planned to the point where America was so hated by these people, and I don't want to mention, a certain race because we don't know what the actual reason was other than they hated America, like you said.
It's not a race, it's an ideal, it's a thought.
They wanted to kill whoever, whenever, and they didn't care who it was.
It's like Teo Makambe. When we had him on, he said it was a thought.
Yeah.
It was a thought. The Europeans wanted the gems and the oil that their nation was rich in.
Teo
Makambe.
Oh, yeah, we had a guest named Teo Makambe.
Where is he from?
He is from Rwanda.
And interjected an idea.
He's a survivor of the genocide that happened there.
Yeah. And
was he one of those lost boys
who survived by hiding in stacks of bloody bodies?
Is that what they call? Was he one? I'm talking about the lost boys. That they had been pushed into becoming child soldier warriors. And
I'm not sure that that's it.
And then they brought them over to the United States.
I know that it started with the value of their land was, and so there was an interjected a thought that said, hey, these people are different than you. They have this, this, and this, and you don't.
Started a civil war.
Yeah, and so it divided them. So people that lived together and just knew who they were and understood the cycle of life and how they would live and what hope there might be for them, and if not, how they had to live to survive through. You know what I mean? So it's basically the wealthy and the poor. They created the idea that there was a class difference. Whereas before that idea was interjected, they just knew that they were born, they worked to live, they had a family, and if they were lucky, they would be brought into service of the, monarchy and the family, the wealthy, to serve them, and that would bring them better wealth and opportunity. You know what I mean? And they just kind of accepted that was the life that they lived, and they were good with it because they were focused on right now, today, who was next to them, and to live the best they could wherever they were. You know, it was just the way they had to live.
It was the Hutus versus the Hutus versus the
Sufu.
Tutsis.
Tutsis
versus the Hutus. Yeah.
Tutsi and the Hutu. But Tutsi and Hutu, those were words, not. It wasn't a race. Hutu and Tutsi described. What's that?
Like tribes.
No, not to them before the idea was injected. Hutu and Tutsi was your position in life. It was what described where you were in your life. Like, so it meant basically you were a peasant or a farmer or somebody who, or you were in service to the monarchy or to the wealthy. That was a word that said who you were, what your station in life was.
So it was like a caste system. They had different castes.
Sort of, but no. But they didn't see it before the idea was given to them.
And who gave it to them?
The Europeans.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, before that, they just knew who they were. You were born a Hutu or a Tutsi, and you could move up if there was an opening and a need in one group that would bring you an opportunity. You would compete for it, and if you got it, you were blessed. And other than that, if you weren't in that, you just knew who you were and what you were, and you lived in that, and I don't want to call it a class because they didn't really even see it that way. They didn't see it that way. And it wasn't until the Europeans came and interjected an idea that they were separate and that they were, and that made them enemies. That one had something the other should desire and then could take. And then when they interjected that idea, then all of the, I think it was the Hutu, started to look at the Tutsi and say, I know that they have what I want, and why can't I have it? Right? And then so then the idea was interjected into the Hutu, or I can't remember which one was the class, but that, hey, these people are trying to take what you have. Whereas before those ideas, where they started to look across and see somebody separate and different from them, instead of being a community that just had a certain life that they were living, some had success and some didn't. You know what I mean? It wasn't until somebody made them look at each other as different and as an enemy that they just, and you should hear it from him, because when he described it and told us about it, because he had his family, he had his home, and he was poor, and he didn't see himself as wanting or needing anything. He said we walked on gems that just laid on the ground.
So, like, as far as 9/11 goes, how does this?
It's the idea. I'm saying
it's
the idea. The parallel. Okay, the parallel that I'm seeing is it's the idea that's interjected. So somebody took their suffering and compared that to someone who wasn't, and then said, we need to rise up and eliminate these people who are not suffering so that we will no longer suffer, that we will have what they have. And it was the idea that brought the masses together to war and to hate and kill and destroy, was making them look at each other as though either as threats to each other.
Or
when
something
they weren't.
that needed to
because
be
look at the people in Twin Towers, right? All those people that died, none of those were a threat to Islam.
Certainly not the majority.
Right.
One of my Muslim friends, Afghani, his cousin died. He had a little kiosk in the subway area below the building, in the mall down there, and he died.
Yeah. So one day they were just going to work, trying to supply their own needs and the needs of their family, and to live. And the next day they were an enemy of somebody who would kill them.
Indiscriminately.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So now all of a sudden, that's the perspective. So one day we're working and just living, trying to do the best that we can with what we have and what opportunities are available to us. And we're trying to do that, to live. And then the next day we have an enemy. So that's the idea. How does the idea come about that, hey, this is an enemy? Well, they had the idea that we were their enemy first, and they were more acutely aware of it. And want to destroy us. And so they came up with a plan of war, of action, to hate and kill and destroy. That idea that made them our enemy, that made them see us as their enemy. When those people, you know what I mean? Am I, I don't know if I can, I'm putting it into words right.
Well,
because that's, I think, what we're not supposed to forget. Or else we're just blind and waiting for the next one.
Wasn't it? They picked the Twin Towers, I think, too, because it was they were looking for a building of some sort that was tall enough to where they could actually fly into, and I think that was one of the reasons. I think that's what I heard.
Yeah, and it was also close to the stock exchange. They wanted to shut down this. From what I understand, they knew that they could shut down the stock exchange or something. They wanted to hit the Pentagon because that's where a lot of our intelligence and everything works.
Well, it's not called the World Trade Center without reason. It's,
right. So they were trying to blind us.
That's exactly why they did the Pentagon, because they were trying to destroy any intelligence that they could. That's exactly it.
Cantor Fitzgerald, the largest bond trader.
They were trying to cut the power.
Yeah,
literally, not just electricity and all that.
Well, there was a lot of
but the power they felt was the biggest threat to them. But how did they see us and the power, the stock market and the world trade, and there were some intelligence agencies there too, right? How do they see those things as such a threat that they would indiscriminately kill innocent people? What was it that brought that threat to them to begin with, that they would rise up and plan and plot and go to war against it? Those are the ideas. Those are the ideas that I think we're really not supposed to forget, is what is it that separates us and makes us enemies to begin with?
Hate.
Where does that idea come from? And that's, I think, what we're not supposed to forget, or else we're otherwise still just blind until it happens again. Like, did we see all of what's happening in our streets today coming? You know, you could see it coming. You could see something going wrong, and you at the first point, at least what I remember, social stuff, the stuff that's going on in our social environments today, I was like, this is absurd. This is crazy. What is wrong with these people, right? That's what I was thinking. You know, girls are boys, boys are girls, and I don't understand all that. You know, and I'm not criticizing them, but when it came at me, I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, so let me tell you, okay, here's why a boy's a boy and a girl's a girl. This is what makes them that. You know, and I'm thinking this is simple, but it turned out not to be so simple. Somehow they had an idea that I was an enemy because my idea of what a girl and a boy was, you know what I mean? This came up. Who was aware of this? And then when it did show its ugly face and made us enemies of each other, and I'm not an enemy, but somehow this idea made us enemies. You can't even speak without being categorized as for or against something or an enemy, right? And it rose up. But this idea that I thought was so crazy was so deeply ingrained and established in these people that there was that I was helpless and hopeless and trying to, you know, trying to let them know who I really am and that I'm not their enemy.
Well, it's the time for agreeing to disagree seems to be
Going out the window, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
under duress, let's say.
Right.
But
You
all
agree to disagree? What's that?
But it didn't kind of come at us like a tsunami. It's like just all of a sudden, you kind of saw it coming. You knew something happened
But
that
it was
wasn't.
growing.
Yeah, that it was growing,
Well,
and
the
then all of a
COVID
sudden,
crisis made it easy to much easier to leverage.
Right.
Yeah, it became yeah.
I think the coronavirus kind of pushed it up in degrees that it was going to happen, but because of the coronavirus, I think everything that and the Black Lives Matter, I think it exploded from there.
In a presidential election year.
Yep, and that's another good point. I've heard. Well, wait until November 4th.
That's a long game.
It will just disappear, and they're thinking that that's a.
So it's a political game, and it's a long game. It's planned way out ahead of time. But that's what I'm saying is how could we have been prepared for this?
Morning,
And
Linda.
you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm able to say what I don't know if I'm saying it.
Was
right.
it, remember what Rahm Emanuel said? Don't let a crisis, never let a crisis go to waste. I don't know if those are his exact words, but he was, with Obama, and he was subsequently the mayor of Chicago. He was Obama's head of staff, I guess. But it's like you wait and boom, the COVID hits, and there's the perfect storm. You got
There you go.
4 points. Election
Exactly.
year, high,
Yeah.
really fractionalized politically, equal and opposite. Well, certainly opposite forces, Republican, Democrat. The virus out of nowhere that it certainly points. I don't mind calling it the China virus or Wuhan virus. That's everything indicates that's where it came from, at the very least.
But could that be what I'm talking about with the idea that makes us up? Because now, if you name it Wuhan, there are
Jared
people who
Story.
consider themselves Wuhan. The population of Wuhan is the people of Wuhan are who you're saying when you say the Wuhan
Right.
virus.
It's all in the spin. I mean, is it regards of, you can call it Wuhan, and on one side they say you're a racist for calling it Wuhan or Chinese, or on the other you're just saying I'm telling where it's from. Like they've said with other viruses, well, that's where it's from.
But isn't what's missing is how do the people from Wuhan or China see? Those are the people the people who are just China. When you say China as a people, you're talking about an awful lot of people.
Yeah,
And,
I heard it slowed
and-
down.
And they don't have anything to do with the virus except they're victims of it.
Right, but except
So
they've
when you say
historically,
that-
they've historically labeled viruses according to where they came from.
They do historically, but what I'm saying in the reality of it isn't the naming it that way the idea that I'm talking about. Aren't we naming when we name a virus as though and then we put it in the light of it's an enemy that attacked us, right?
Which is, well, there's evidence to support that.
There is, but not China. There is a
Right,
name
China, the
behind
lead-
it,
the
an actual
leader.
person and a group of people who have names, and they should be discovered. You know what I mean? N1 virus is probably the proper name for it because it's the technical scientific name for it. When you start to name it the China virus, anybody who's Chinese is now our enemy.
Yep.
But again,
Well, because imagine being Chinese. If I called it, so where are you from? If I called it the Branson virus, and the Branson virus is our enemy, the
But
Branson people let this out.
yeah, but if it came from Branson, it depends on how it depends upon how you interpret the word.
Right.
It doesn't, because no matter what, some will interpret it as saying they are being blamed for something they're not blamed for, and then they are at an economic war, and all of this other stuff is going on that's hurting them, as though they are an enemy.
Why is this the first time that I know of when a virus named after a place where it originated, the issue of that's racist or that's anti that city or country becomes the story versus it was always where it came from. Now it's, oh, that's, and you're saying that because you want to attack that place or those people. That's called spin.
No.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because because it's a matter of whether you focus on where it came from or why you're using that word, and to whether you're doing it aggressively or just dispassionately.
Well, what did I miss?
A lot.
Quite a bit. Quite a bit.
Quite a bit. You're
I'm
probably
not-
right.
And I'm not making a stand on an opinion or a position here. I'm trying to discover what it is that makes us enemies. What it is that makes us enemies.
Well, obviously,
that somebody who's not an enemy.
It's competing. It's a power struggle.
It's a power struggle. It's religious.
But we don't want that, do we?
Good
Do
morning,
we
Larry
want to be
Melton.
made enemies of somebody that's not our enemy
Welcome,
because of a word?
welcome to the
Human race.
human race, the history of mankind,
Yeah.
a world at war.
I
So
It is
never
what it
forget
is.
because it's coming again.
Well,
the
it's
one
history
thing, okay,
repeating
so the
itself.
one thing that I think of when I say never forget, I don't forget the victims of this. I try not to think too much about the people that caused it because I don't want to give them. This is just me, though. I don't want to give the people who did this to these innocent people any. I don't want them to occupy any time in my brain and in my heart. I want to remember the people, the husbands, the daughters, the wives, the children of others, and the families that were affected by this, and the families that were affected by the war, World War I, World War II, all of that. We should remember all that because it's. And I agree with you on that. We should try to remember, if we know the true cause of it, the true source of that kind of hatred, and we also need to remember to love
It
people.
is the devil.
It is the
his
enemy.
great work.
And that there are going to be
Not good
wars
work,
until Jesus comes again.
But great in that it's
Whether they're small or great.
Yeah, and
affects so much.
yeah, and it's indoctrination, all that stuff. Now, when Jesus comes again, there's going to be what they say. They're going to start beating their swords into plowshares.
Mm-hmm.
The lion's going to lay down with the lamb.
I can't wait for that.
No, I can't either. There'll be no more war. There'll be no more temptation of sin.
Yeah,
There'll be
that'll
no more of that.
gone.
Be living with Jesus in eternal life,
Light or day will be 24/7.
So,
Or there won't be any 24/7.
because there are families that are still psychologically and emotionally affected that have not figured out how to cope with the loss of the person or people that they lost in this.
Well, you can't get them back. So
No,
it's
you
not-
can't. So pray for them, that God give them peace, I'm one of those people, I'm an empathetic person, so whenever I think of stuff like that, I imagine myself in that position and almost like I'm going through it with them, and it breaks my heart. I can't even really fully comprehend the fear and terror and pain and suffering that the people went through in there.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's a lot of PTS going on.
Oh, yeah, a lot of PTSD.
Mhm,
Yeah.
Yep. A
Um,
lot of it.
well,
Scars that will never go away.
yeah.
Yeah, you feel it a little bit every 9/11, really.
Yeah.
You start to think about
Even
it.
us, and I don't know anybody that was in the towers, but I still know that they were people, innocent people, and their families were innocent people.
And innocent kids. Innocent children.
Yes, and even the people from that had the kiosk, and that were from Pakistan, right? You said Afghanistan, downstairs,
And just a good guy trying to make a living in America.
Innocent.
A recent immigrant. Yeah.
innocent. And the one thing that it did do is it did make almost all America simultaneously racist against Middle Eastern people in that way.
And then right after that, I don't know if you realize, right after that, all of a sudden, these Muslim and these mosques were getting attacked, and Muslim
Yeah.
They had nothing to do with it. It was
No.
the extreme.
Yeah.
It was these Muslims, and families that were being targeted.
And then the news was
Yeah.
showing Afghanistan people dancing in the streets and celebrating.
Yeah.
And
But the spin, we don't know what they were really
right,
celebrating.
exactly. Now there was a guy I used to go. He owned it was a little gas station there on Benton and or Kimbrew and Chestnut. The little quick pantry there, and he had the best pizzas. And he said, I just let him know that I talk to him all the time. I said, I don't think you're a bad guy, just so you know. He got a lot of flack from a lot of people that went in there. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm ashamed of my countrymen that we're doing that we're celebrating, the loss. And that was pretty hectic.
Well, that's another issue is the 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah.
Just fill it up with
stuff.
Radical events and radical behavior.
And that went on for weeks.
Sells.
Well, and that's, I think, they're as a nation
8 weeks, I think.
fed that spin that
8.
America is their enemy.
It was.
I
figured it was.
And when you say America, you mean me. When you say America, I'm included. But I'm not their enemy. You see what I mean? So over there, whatever's suffering and whatever's happening in their country, that their leadership is spinning with the America attached to it as a negative thing, that makes them my enemy. They hate me, and they don't even know me, and I'm not their enemy. But you see what I mean? It's those ideas that we have to be careful of and not let affect us so deeply.
Well, now we're dealing with the intellectual elites versus the deplorables, and are we going the same?
Remember, we're the deplorables. Remember that?
Sorry.
You know what we need to remember is the good thing. What happens when you find an enemy injured on the field?
Yes.
You
Amen.
take them to the Red Cross and you know what I
Help
mean?
them.
Love
Yeah.
your enemies.
Because
Love your
they're
enemies.
both victims of an idea.
Amen.
Well, that being said, sorry to cut it off. We've got to get ready for our next show, which will be the Morning Mouth with Johnny Rooster and Pastor Matt right here. Another 9/11 memorial show. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us on the Morning Drive today. We'll be back on Monday, same time, same channel. So until then, my friends, God bless you and keep you. My name is Matt.
My name is Jay.
My name is Steve.
Jeff with a G.
And this has been
The
the
Morning
Morning
Drive.
Drive.